Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today is March 17, 2026. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. Also want to thank the world of Pixel Vision for introducing me to today's guest, Henry Lowengard. Where are you calling from, Henry?
I am in the first capital of New York State, Kingston, New York.
How cool is that? First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing is to be kind and to realize that there's more than you in the world. And amongst those things are a great number of animals and plants. So that's what I think.
That is brilliant. You covered the waterfront, and I agree with all three of those really well. Well put there. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Well, I have a lot of experience with audio. My ears are still very good, even at my advanced age of 69. But I do a lot of music. So the music is something that is a way that I do stuff. And I also noticed at a very early age that an old tape of something in a weird way is more engrossing, it's more enveloping than an old photograph. It just surrounds you in a way that the photograph doesn't. So that's sort of how I prefer to do things in terms of consumption. So I'm a big radio listener. And I also listen to old time radio dramas and ones that are not that old, but in fact, at this point are 40 years old. So there's a whole lot of radio drama out there and still being produced, mostly not in the United States. But
I'm a huge radio person. Everything you said there. I want to clarify one thing you said, though, that an old tape is, you made a value judgment, is better. You mean a 78 or?
No, an old audio tape.
You mean an old audio cassette because of the hiss level is
most of my old stuff is actually on open reel, but there you go.
Okay, so you're saying that I didn't get what it's better than, or that you favor it. An older tape, either on reel. I mean, you're talking about magnetic tape, right?
I am, but yeah. The thing is that what I'm not talking so much about the quality of it, but the fact the fact that it puts you into the space of where it was recorded better than the photograph.
Yeah, better the space. Yeah, okay. Magnetic tape. That's amazing, because I used to show 35 millimeter films in Ann Arbor, Michigan. 2 films had 4 tracks of magnetic tape on the 35 millimeter cinema. And it was Man Who Fell to Earth and Grateful Dead film. And it was unbelievable, because our whole career our whole history going to movies, well, not whole, but a lot of it was, you see it in Fantasia, was white light reading the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So the fidelity, the power of 4 tracks of magnetic tape on a 35 millimeter, that the sound was way better. And you don't know that because you never heard it on magnetic until we got those films.
There are a whole bunch of recordings that were put out in the early days of LPs when they were trying to figure out how to make them now that they had better fidelity, that were in fact recorded on 35 millimeter film that were magnetically done, and that's pretty good. Yeah, I've had but it even stretches further back than that, because we had a family friend who was a radio comedian in the days of so-called old time radio, and listening to air checks that were done, transcription discs, right, which were probably just acetates sent from one coast to the other, or being used as target practice on boats. But listening to these old programs from the 30s where she's speaking, her voice was the same in the 60s, 70s, and 80s as it was in the 30s. And it was amazing to hear her old voice be the same as her new voice in a world that is so evaporated.
What's
So
what's her name, Henry?
her name was Mary Hunter Wolf, and she was on a show called Easy Aces, and she was like the silly friend of the friend. So
Wow.
she was
Love
like
it.
secretary.
You've got to come to Venice, California, or I hope you do someday, because our dear friend Brad Kay, his house is a museum of every device that's ever recorded sound. So he has a lathe to cut cylinders and a cylinder player, and then all through 78s and all kinds of methods to record audio sound. So the next question is, what's your favorite form of information? The question after that is, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, it goes back to what is an individual, and it is actually more than you yourself, as I tried to point out before.
Yeah.
And amongst these things are other people, and the way that you can call them to invoke them is through all these objects. Now, you're not really seeing it here because I'm on a pixel vision camera, but trust me, I'm sitting here in a huge pile of stuff. It's like I'm in a storage chamber. And so it's, I've surrounded myself with these things. And you'd think, minimalize, is this speaking to you? No, throw it out. Or what is that thing? Does it spark joy? I believe is the catchphrase. Get rid of it. So, unfortunately, too many things are sparking joy around here. And also, I was actually I'm always in these situations where it's actually an advantage that I know exactly where everything is in this pile of stuff. So, there was I don't know if I want to get into this too much, but there was a computer that I helped build about in the late 70s and up to 1980, around 1975 to 80. It's getting on 50 years ago. And this is a very, very early microcomputer before everybody had computers on their wrists and in their pockets, or even in their houses at all. And so the group of the group that put this computer together, I wrote the software for some of the software for it. And I happen to have a lot of artifacts relating to this. So they recently found this computer and made a special display for it back at my college, which is Trinity College in Hartford. And just the other day, literally, they unveiled it, and a bunch of other old timers were there. I couldn't make it because of logistics, but this was like last week. And I had all these things that I knew exactly where they were in the house that related to this stuff. So, in short, I was actually still connected to these memories. This wasn't just a pile of old papers and drawings and whatever.
And it sounds like you got good memory and good organization skills. So I appreciate this. You're really articulate and concise, Henry. And I wanted to add, when you said it's more than yourself, my friend's partner, she's a psychologist specialist, and he learned from her, and I was blown away, that at the end of Freud's life, he kind of said, yeah, Jung is a little more right than me, because it's more collective than individual. And psychoanalysis shouldn't be on the individual, it should be on the collective. So more than yourself sort of resonates to me with what you say there, more than yourself. Why do you think humans collect? Oh, no, I asked that. What do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Nature and nurture. Am I going to put my foot in that puddle?
Well, the beauty of this is, let me just clarify. Yeah, no, let me just clarify. A lot of these questions or some of these questions at the beginning, is it more this or more that? Of course it's both, and of course it depends. But I'm not after you answering the question. I'm just using these as prompts. I'm for stories, anecdotes, tangents, and I'm for rewording the question. If you go, well, I would reword that. And I'm also totally open to saying, I don't know, or I can't answer that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, in other words. But in essence, that's sort of what it's leaning towards. That a little more nature or a little more innate, is a little more innate or a little more invented, and you can go from there. Yeah, you don't have to answer the question.
Well, it's sort of to the extent that things can be in your blood. What it really means is you're around other people. It's not your blood. It sounds like it's nature, but if it's in your blood, what it really means is you're around people who have the same blood as you do. So it sounds like it's nature when in fact it is nurture in some cases. And I know that I'm from a family full of pack rats, and also that they also have had some of this stuff thrust upon them that we discover every time somebody dies, and they end up being distributed to me and my family. So I think that this feeling, you can be in a culture where you just don't have all this stuff, or you're nomadic, and it doesn't make a sense. Actually, there's some nomadic cultures which have caches of stuff, so they just go from one cache to another. That's how they make things work. They don't have to drag everything with them all the time, as long as they're on a route. So it kind of goes both ways, I guess. So is this human? Are there other animals that do the same thing? That I don't know. That would be a really interesting question.
Really good, because that's anthropomorphizing words on animals. And yeah, I think animals do things that are similar to humans, or we do things similar to animals, but we don't know their language per se. But I'm curious, just to add a tangent question, Henry. People who live till 90 or 100 years old, your hunch or your guess, is it a little more lifestyle choice, or is it a little more DNA, or it's for you just down the middle, can't answer? It's both.
Well, I mean, if you've got DNA that doesn't really let you go that long, there's not too much you can do about it. Although you can never underestimate the power of 21st century medicine. And yeah. It's really quite stunning if it's allowed to be practiced. So that's what I think. But also, I mean, I'm a non-drinker. I've never smoked. I never had any drugs. I don't have any of these habits which tend to wear down your facilities. I do have gray hair. You can't tell.
Well, what about Kurzweil? He takes a ton of supplements.
No, I take nothing. I don't eat a lot of red meat.
Yeah.
I just prefer not to eat any of that stuff. It's just sort of Bartleby the Scribner way of living. I just don't need that. I think that I don't have that hole that needs to be solved by consumption and saying, hey, I need a drink, or I need a drug or something. I just don't have that.
Is that a Melville reference? You get Scribner way of living?
Yeah, Bartleby the Scribner, right?
Yeah.
He comes up, shows up for work, and doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was good. But that's amazing what you just said there. Anyways, all the power to you. That's good. So you don't believe in supplements at all?
Well, I mean, if it's actually doing something, maybe, but I'm not taking anything but a little omega-3 pill, a little fish oil. That's the only thing.
You take fish oil? That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were a little worried about my cholesterol level, which is actually inherited. It's never done anything none of my family has any heart issues whatsoever. But, these people, they read stuff and they think this, and it's not going to kill me. And I don't mind taking one fish oil pill a day. That's not a problem.
Thank you so much. Okay, this is fun. So, do thoughts create emotions?
Well, I also have a deep background in artificial intelligence, and it's amazing what you read into these actual pieces of nonsense. I'm interested in it because we know that there isn't a brain there. So you want to know what's the baseline for brainlessness, and people can get very manipulated. And you're hearing lots of stories now because it's, I was not exactly on the cutting edge of it, but I could absolutely see how this happens. That just the fact that something is interacting with you in a way that is listening to you, which is happening with these artificial intelligence programs, that is where you get that feeling of emotion. That's where that bond comes from. It comes from that interaction. You're building a sort of micro community. So indeed, that's where I think it does come from. But, how, quote, real is it, unquote? Nobody even knows how real it is in the beginning. They always talk, oh, it's ineffable, or, we can only express it in music or art or something, because we sure can't figure out how to say it in words. So, yeah, I think that there is, there needs to be something, but the building is in the process. That's basically what I think, that the emotions come out of the process of that community and understanding.
Really good, Henry. Thanks again. That communicated a lot to me right there. I like that, what you taught me there. And I was wondering if you've ever heard this term McLuhan throws around a lot, effects precede causes. And sometimes in talking about AI with people, I go, we already have emotion in robots. How? So it doesn't matter if it's true or not. We saw it on a movie screen and it gave us this sort of idea. So you're like, oh no, because Eric McLuhan, Marshall's son, kind of nailed it with language. He said, the word fact, F-A-C-T, and the word fake, F-A-K-E, are both rooted in the Latin word to make.
Yeah.
So once Stanley did this, and he admitted that he was, why did you make 2001? In the Playboy interview, he says, to convolate Marshall McLuhan. So once he put Hal as an emotional being, is that a form of effects precede causes?
Or special effects in the case of Kubrick.
That is some witty shit, dude. I love that.
Well, they used to say Wordsworth found the sermons in the rocks that he put under there. There's a lot of that going on in a lot of artistic, revelations and artworks. But to get back to, where it could, what the real conflict might be. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. Have you heard this term, effects precede causes?
Well, I've heard a different thing, which is William Carlos Williams, no ideas but in things.
No ideas but in things. So right. Is that retro causality?
I think that it's sort of like a mirror to what the things precede causes or whatever.
Effects precede causes.
Effects precede causes.
You're saying
you don't even know what causes are. In fact, it could be billions of causes. So for you to find a cause, you've won a prize. but
you want to cry? I missed that word. CRY.
You've won a prize.
You won a prize. Oh my God.
But there
I
could be
heard
more going
I heard it as the word,
on.
I heard it differently. And then I thought of the great line in Finnegan's Wake where James Joyce wrote, "Let us pry, Pry, instead of let us pray." Okay.
No,
Now,
that's a whole book full of things showing you how language is really very mutable. It was something I discovered with one of my AI-ish kind of programs called Soundbite, which was what it was is it would listen to audio, it would try and build a grammar out of the sound that it found, and then it would spit out audio based on that grammar that it created. You know how they talk about large language models with thousands and billions of parameters in them? This one
yeah.
had one parameter in it.
Oh,
It's like what sound came after this one, and
yeah.
how close is this sound to another one, and see what sounds come after that one. So that's how it built its grammar. It was just, oh, I am here, let me go there. And actually that's what's going on with these large language models too, but it's doing it at a much larger space of possibilities.
Really
But
good. I wanted to go back for 1 second, Henry. When you said the word sermon rocks under that line, what was that line and what's the source of that line?
oh, it's a Wordsworth, William Wordsworth. Go look that up. That's, you could probably find that in wiki quotes or something.
Yeah.
And it was about him. It wasn't by him.
Oh, it's about Wordsworth. And say the quote one more time, please.
It's something like, Wordsworth found the sermons under the rocks because he was always writing poems about nature, right? That he put there. So he sort of found what he knew already, whenever he looked.
Beautiful.
Something like that.
No, that was really good.
So
That's go ahead.
what I'm getting to with this soundbite story is, so sound would come in, and the interesting thing about processing sound instead of words is that it doesn't have that layer of editing that happens when you actually write down an idea. There's an awful lot of editing to even be able to write the letters down, because you have no idea. Once it's on the paper, you don't know how the inflections were. You don't know all the context of it or how to pronounce it or any of that stuff. But in audio, all that stuff is there. It's closer to what thought is. You think more in audio, getting back to my audio thing. So, so this fun little program would go and scramble things together and put things together. And as I said, its idea is to find words that are similar, sounds that are similar, and link them together and pretend they're equivalent, and then go on to the next sound. So what would happen is it would find words that you were part of an idiom or were part of another word, but the sound was inside another word. And that process of understanding is processing this all the time, is doing that same, match it up and see what comes next, trying to predict. And so it would put together things that you had no idea would be put together. It was very surprising because you don't think of the inside of a word as being separate from the totality of it. I don't know if this is getting through. So it would come up with something like United State of War, because it heard United States, and then we are now entering a state of war. And in your head, this is also happening, but you edit it out. There's an awful lot of stuff going on in your head that never makes its way to what might be called consciousness. But it's there nevertheless, because it has to be there. There's no way to filter it out. It's like you're actually dreaming all the time and you don't admit it. How do you know? What's the main characteristic of a dream? It's that you forget it. And think of all the things, you can't even think of the things that you've forgotten because you've forgotten them, but it's happening continuously. You couldn't operate if you remembered everything. So I'm part of a group called Deep Listening Organization. Deep Listening was founded, this concept, by Pauline Oliveros. And go watch her biography movie that came out a few years ago. You'll get the whole idea. But part of the a side effect of this is the thing called a Dream Festival that happens every year here in Kingston that I participate in from time to time. And so we're very dream conscious here.
Wow, there's a lot packed in there because I have this phenomenon I wanted to talk about in regards to subtitling, because it seemed as though you touched on something there. So first of all, I take notes when I'm doing my interviews. So when the thumbnail comes up, sometimes my head's turned this way and people write in the comment, the host won't even look at the guy. And it's because I'm looking at my Say it again.
You just need more B-roll.
Yeah, I don't, there's no editing, but I will write down, like I did, the time. There's the 21. At the 21 moment, I can go back and see and re-listen to what you told me about the Wordsworth. And I don't usually do it, but I'll investigate it somehow through Google or whatever. And then I can also turn the subtitle button on YouTube. And so that's a fun little game, because it's often very Finneganese, way. And my two favorites are in the feature film that Frank Zappa made called 200 Motels. In the German version, it was subtitled, and the character in the film, Jimmy Carl Black, goes, "You can stick this pin upside your ass." In the title on the German version, the subtitle says, "Here's your pin back." And then Jean-Luc Godard took a one
rückwärts, and your Rücken on your rückwärts.
Right. And then the great filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard, one of his latest films, before he died, he subtitled it in American Indian indigenous language. So it wasn't subtitled. So it's also this whole thing, Mussolini helped promote dubbing films because he didn't want people he wanted their people to hear the film in their dialect. He didn't want people to hear someone dubbing it or reading it in subtitles. So I think that's similar to what you're talking about a little in the dream and the soundbite thing, is how we change over to other mediums to consume things, So fill in the blank, Henry. I don't know what I think until I
don't know what I think until I drink some water. That's what it is. Actually, that's something that I often bring up, even in my good old corporate days, which is a whole lot of decisions are made by dehydrated people.
Yeah.
And a dehydrated person does not think as well as a hydrated person.
Yeah.
That's my real discrimination. This
beautiful.
Is water, by the way.
Water. Tap water, or you buy it?
New York State has the best tap water ever, so.
Beautiful.
I live actually near the Ashokan Reservoir, which is one of the reservoirs that feeds New York City. But we actually get our water from a different place. Same rain, same mountains, same Catskills. So the water is about the same.
Beautiful. I visited Oneonta for many years in a row, and Kingston and that whole area. So I know the area a little. And so McLuhan said, "I don't know what I think until I say it." Joan Didion said, "I don't know what I think until I write it." Can humans think without language?
Well, I think so. They may not know they're doing it. They're probably operating more in that dream state that I mentioned before. I mean, there are animals that do have sort of language, and then there are animals that we can't tell if they have language, but clearly they outnumber us. And so they're doing things, and things that require decisions and modeling what they are in. So that's sort of what I think of as thinking. Let me go back and make a more general statement, which is people tend to think, would love to think that there's some kind of rational bunch of rules that mesh together, that make a thought. And that was, there's so many things about that. There's a great tradition of that. Let's go and examine all these things and find the pattern that makes this happen. But in fact, the way that things actually work is through stories. There's a story that you connect yourself into. You know the story, you figure out the story, and you try to find the right story for the situation you're in and where you fit, or find out what the actors are in that story. And so it's just an overflowing pile of stories, some of which can be backed up by facts, thank God. But mostly they're very heuristic. And there isn't really a process. Even our process of rational thought is a story itself. So that's basically what it all boils down to. If as long as you understand that that's how that thinking, quote unquote, works, you're predicting stuff by knowing what the story is and plugging yourself into it, or plugging, whatever the situation is into it. Now, it may be that you need to change your story every once in a while. That's a very tough thing to do, as you can tell from American politics these days. But it can happen. And, it happens all the time in science. That's called the scientific revolution, when they decide, oh, wait a minute, Newtonian physics is great, but these little tiny particles, they're just not behaving that way. That kind of stuff happens once in a while. And people, revise the stories that they use for describing the world. So that's sort of where I come from.
Really good. You covered a lot of topics we're going to get into, and I appreciate that. What's another word for heuristic? What do you mean by that word?
Heuristic actually is kind of like one of those things. It's like, do you know what a lemma is? All right. So heuristics are where it's like a rule of thumb. That's basically what it is. But it's, it's a little more generalized than that, but that's what you can think of. In fact, that's a little micro story that leads to a bigger story, you see. Something simpler that leads, that helps you get to the bigger story. It's more helpful than, say, another kind of heuristic, which is the straw man argument, where you make something up because you can't possibly understand it. So you make something up and then you go and you work with the thing you've made up, which is totally invalid, right? So, we don't know what Haitians are, but they must be eating cats, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Why not? How about, or the welfare queen? I'm not even sure there ever was a welfare queen.
Yeah.
Maybe there were two of them. Or the famous immigrants voting. That literally cannot happen and doesn't happen. But now we have a bill literally in Congress right now putting restrictions on legitimate voters to get rid of the straw man illegitimate voters.
Yeah. Is it touch on what Orwell said, doublespeak?
Well, I think doublespeak is more malicious. I think you can fall into this all the time. You can, you don't even know. You don't know that you're doing this.
Yeah.
Very tough to have that kind of consciousness. But yeah, our doublespeak is really good these days. It's almost like he's picking the book up and saying, "What have we not done yet? Here's a couple of pages that we haven't hit yet." It's unbelievable how close to it is, and it might actually be something like that when all the secrets of this administration are revealed.
Henry, you anticipated the next question beautifully. You must have ESP. Chomsky said language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, I make faces pretty well. And then
Yeah.
I'm also a musician, as I mentioned before. I do a lot of musical stuff. Keeps me sane.
Yeah.
I could do demos, but of course you have echo suppression on here, which suppresses music. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to go and grab my headphones just so that I can give you examples. But, you know, we'll have links afterwards. I've got plenty of stuff up on YouTube.
Yes, beautiful. I do recommend people go to your amazing website, and there's lots of links. So thank you for that. And we'll get into music too. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Well, again, that's a dichotomy that I think obfuscates what's really going on. Is like we're narrative beings, and we think of some of these narratives as thinking, and some of it as feeling.
Yeah.
It's we've that's where I sit on this burning question.
These are again, you anticipate a huge amount of questions I'm going into. So Alan Turing in the 50s, two questions. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Well, you have to try and figure out what a soul is first in order to answer that question. To say that there's, you know, if I like to say to people, do, you know, other animals have souls? And they'll say, I guess so. I mean, this dog clearly has a soul, right? You know, maybe a soul is, can you love this thing? You know, because you don't really think of bacteria as having souls, but in fact, I look like a human being, but I'm actually a vast community of bacteria that is digesting my food for me, and little tiny blood cells that are doing their work. You know, and I'm supposed to be the only one with a soul here.
Great laugh. That's what.
Another thing is that I'm long associated with a place called the Widow Jane Mine, which is an a former cement mine that we give performances in here in Rosendale, New York, which is about 14 miles from here. Yeah, 10 miles. Depends on which way you go. So people come in and say, oh, is it haunted? Is this a haunted mine? You know, because things are haunted, right? And I say, well, just think of what kind of energy it would take to make a ghost. And if that could happen, why would only a few things have ghosts? Why wouldn't the billions and billions and billions of dead things, you know, that ever lived on Earth, why wouldn't they all have ghosts? You know, it's like, you know, you have nerfed, as we say in the comics biz, you have nerfed ghostiness, you know? Everybody has this superpower if one of them has that superpower. So what's going on, buddy? So if things are haunted and you're hearing squeaks in your house, let me tell you about water and insects. They really find their way and they make some noise and they do cause trouble. You don't really need a poltergeist when your house is full of leaks and animals.
You will appreciate maybe a word McLuhan made up, poltergeist.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to clarify that word before, ghostiness. Nerf, N-E-R-F?
Yeah. Do you know what
Good.
nerf is?
Tell me.
That's where you have these superpowers in a super being, and they come up against the bad guy, or they're just living their life, and they're not using that superpower when they clearly could. You know, the classic example is, you know, the Flash, who can move so fast that he can, run through time. He comes up to the bad guy, and the bad guy just sits in front of him blabbing instead of him just saying, okay, poof, and, taking his clothes off and wrapping him up and, whatever. He doesn't, it's like they just sit around instead of using the power that is totally innate in their lives. And people nerf themselves all the time, so they don't realize the power they actually have.
Yeah.
Or rather, it's the opposite side of, script armor, as you may have heard, or plot armor. That's where, the bad guys, when they're shooting at the good guy, never hit him because he's protected by plot armor. That good guy, unlike the good guy has to make it to the next chapter or, the next episode of the TV show. So, as you can tell, I'm a little wide-ranging here, but hey,
love it. Again, I appreciate it. You're teaching me a lot, Henry, and I really appreciate your time here. So the second Turing question is, can machines think?
Well, even he didn't think machines think, but, can they do enough stuff that's close enough to thinking that it can be useful? Probably.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things. Can they think? There's a problem with the phrase artificial intelligence because it's full of baggage.
Yeah.
But a large language model is very specific for the kind of work that we used to do, which was called expert systems. That's, exactly what the process is there, what it can do, and what its limitations are. Artificial intelligence is hand wavy. You don't know what it could be. And, some cars can figure out how to drive, sort of. And ideally, because they're all networked together, if one of them runs into a problem, it can tell all the other cars how it solved that problem. But we're finding that there's a sort of a limit. They actually cannot drive kind of better than their training allows them to drive, because that's how they're learning, which means that at some point they're going to drive just as poorly as humans do, which is not super bad. I mean, we're living with humans driving all the time, right? But it's not something that I can work with. Besides, I don't have a car. I'm a bicycle person, and I'm pedestrian.
Yeah, me too. I'm a bike person. But just to make it into the sense of where I am in Venice, California, we've been used by Waymo for many years, or a couple of years, as a training ground for the many, many robot cars, driverless cars.
Mm-hmm.
So if I've studied the effects at my salons, I ask people any, stories, and they've told me all kinds of stories. But the two I learned recently that I find interesting is busy intersection up here, and a Waymo's making an illegal turn, which I never see happen. Mm-hmm. And the guy in back of him's honking. And I'm like, dude, you're honking at a robot. And so I went home. I didn't say it to him. I just thought, that's interesting. Does he realize that? So I went home and I said I Googled, I says, can Waymos respond to a honking horn? And the answer was yes, but maybe not in the way humans do, which I thought was an AI answer to an AI device. The other one was that you can address them both if you want. The other one was, there's what I understand from an Waymo activist is one person sits in a room with 6 TV screens, and he kind of remotely drives 6 cars, half and half. The car's doing it and the human's doing it. And they see that the passenger left the Waymo with the door open. So do you know how they get the door shut? They call an Uber. And the Uber goes, and I'm like, dude, hire homeless people to shut the door and give them a tip or something. That
delivery robot will shut it soon. Don't you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Why didn't they realize they had to have a little device that shuts the door automatically? So, that's, a little arm, whatever. But
I don't know. My question, you were talking about beeping, and my question is, will they eventually learn to beep themselves? That is,
Yeah.
they see that the cars around them are behaving in a way that is keeping
Yeah.
them from doing what they need. Is it going to honk at those cars in an attempt for the other cars to change their behavior?
That I
So,
haven't seen, but there's one
and then,
device.
and then of course it compounds it. Your street is full of AI cars, and they're all misbehaving and honking at each other.
Each other. But
There you go.
there's a device on a Waymo that I was like, that's a no-brainer. Why haven't they put this on all cars? It's a little, there's 27 cameras on a Waymo. No human has 27 eyes. So right there, it's a no-brainer. Why would I ever go in a car with a friend who's a safe driver when I can do that? But I've never hired a Waymo. I probably never will. But on top of a Waymo is a turning little light emitting device that tells you when the Waymo is stopping. There's a figure that a person is walking across the street. So they use that light emitting device on the roof of the car to tell you why the car is doing something. And I think, well, all cars should have that. Why not?
Uh-huh.
So
I can. Yeah. I learned to drive rather late in life. I was 46. And unlike teenagers who learn how to drive, who just want to get out of the class as soon as possible, I was kind of interested in the content. And the main thing that I picked up from that class is that there is a lot of communication in driving. And so if you get into a certain lane and look like you're going to turn, you'd better turn, because you're actually making a statement. That's, it may not be in words. And so you've got your little blinky light, which I'm sure was a fantastic innovation once they decided they needed it, because you sure didn't do it with horse and buggy, did you? I don't think so. So turning lights and, brake lights, they're very, very useful. So that's kind of minimal, but it would be nice to have a little bit more information on the back of your car for the guys in back of you saying, hey, but you're getting some of that stuff from your navigation apps. They're telling you that there are cops ahead of you. They're telling you that there's a traffic jam and you might want to go on some other road. Again, that's it's a sort of an extension of communication that's already there, but it sort of takes it to that next level. So I don't know what that the point of all that, but you get the idea.
It's really well put, because I have to cross a few busy streets on my 3 bike rides a day. And now I've learned, when I go to a crosswalk where I manually hit the light to flash to stop the cars, it's safer than doing it at the intersection. And I walk in front of that car and I make sure that car is stopped and given me eye contact. And these people sometimes have no sense of eye contact. And I'm like, I get pissed. I go, have you ever heard of eye contact to communicate? So your word communication is really important. Little hand signals, I see you, because if I walk in front of a car that's stopped, it ain't going to mean they're had a bad day and they hit the wrong thing and hit me. So the bike riding is the most dangerous sport in the world, because the most people do it in the world. So anyways, onward and upward. This is really fun. And I appreciate you laughing there, because that's what we're here to do, is have fun. The next one is, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I don't know. I'm very happy pursuing meaning.
Yeah. Well, I got it from Viktor Frankl.
Every time I have a problem if there's something I need to do 3 times in a row, I probably write a little script for it. Or, I'm full of busted machinery in this place, and sometimes I'm altering that busted machinery. Just because I can see what's there. I'm a programmer not because, well, I am because I can't stop, but also because other people's programs have not been fulfilling what I need to have done.
Right.
And so that's where that comes from. And of course, I got a big feedback from it. It's really great when something that you write actually works. People who haven't tried that, you can get some of that actually from other crafts. If you've repaired your hem or sewn up that rip in your thing or figured out how to get that hole in your sweater closed in a way that's beautiful. That's so satisfying. It's incredible. And it's like, how can this, ridiculous activity be so satisfying?
No,
But it
sewing.
is.
I love sewing. I learned sewing from my mom.
Sewing is fantastic.
It
My
is
sewing
amazing.
is making birds' nests a lot like now. So I need to figure out why it's doing that so much. But on the other hand, when I have it going, it's very, very, very satisfying. And you come up with this thing. I tell people that programming is like doing crossword puzzles.
Yeah.
And it very much is. You have this thing, this fits into that thing, this has to be here, especially cryptic crosswords, if you know what those are. But the cool thing is at the end, instead of a puzzle that you have to throw away in the trash, you have something that's executable that can lead you on to the next thing that you do. You can build tools, which is a little hard to do with a crossword puzzle.
Well, it's funny because, Henry, I got the question from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says, happiness doesn't tend to last, meaning tends to last. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's a statement from a person who feels like when they're happy, they have to that it doesn't last, that they have to go off and actively work at it, that it evaporates for them. That's what it sounds like to me. It's more of a reflection of him than any kind of observation, I think. Is it like...
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm done.
Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away? Are we more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Well, again, all these things go back to this story thing that I talk about.
Yeah.
We have a story that says there is such a thing as consciousness, but in fact, we're dreaming all the time.
Yeah.
Just have a story that we're conscious. So, it's pretty functional, but that's not what's really going on if that's what you're really looking for.
Yeah, I'm not looking for anything specific, but dialogue and fun. So what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Oh, the speed of light. You can't beat that physics. That's the limit, folks.
The poet Audre Lorde said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Her colleague Yvonne Rayner said, oh, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, as I've been pointing it out, it's like this consciousness of how, what's really holding it together. How do you process the world? And so if you can get your hands on that, that's the real tool.
Yeah. What's a toy you gravitate towards?
What do I gravitate toward? Toys. Well, as I say, I play a lot of music and it's hard to tell whether that's a toy or not. But, some of that music, of course, is not about me. It's about playing with a group. I'm in a gamelan. And gamelons are, like pickup bluegrass bands. You are not really, you can have an ego and be really horrible about it, but that just doesn't really work in a gamelan. It's a community. So, it gets me out, and it's sort of like, we do performances, but mainly it's the process of learning stuff.
Yeah.
That is really, really the good happiness in that, because it's the same thing with programming, by the way, because the situation changes so often, you are learning constantly. You cannot sit on your laurels. There was a time when you sort of could, because every bit of programming was done privately in isolated companies where you had this pile of code, typically on reels of tape or punch card, and you were the person, or your group were the only ones who were like the high priests of that particular process. That is mostly evaporated these days, thank goodness. But now everything changes rapidly every few weeks. There's lots more to learn if you are trying to do something in an efficient manner. So I still keep my hand in, but yeah, it's continuous learning, and that's really what I'm interested in.
Resonates with me a lot. That's why I do this dialogues, and I appreciate it. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Well, I go to bed late every night. Of course, I keep checking the news to see if Trump is dead yet, but it hasn't happened yet. It's just because I know that I'm in a good state myself, but I can't tell what the future is going to be like here. And it's not just that. I'm a big, not climate activist, but it's like that's the argument that I go to whenever there's a question about allocating resources, which is what politics is supposed to be about. It's like, well, why is this here? And for example, I say, is there going to be a 2030? I mean, that's really, I think, how fast it'll be for the climate crisis to really become unavoidably problematic. I mean, right now, you in California are having a heat wave. We over here in the East Coast are having a cold wave. And let me tell you something about engineering. I mean, we had an 80-degree day the other day, and then it dropped down to 40 about 12 hours later. Let me tell you what happens to materials when you get those differences in temperature. They get stressed. And there is nothing in your engineering book when you built that bridge that said, oh, it's going to be 80 degrees, and then it's going to be 40 degrees, and then it's going to be 50 degrees, and then it's going to be like that. The metal is going like this. It's bouncing back and forth like jello and stressing everything out. And all that infrastructure that you think would be, lasting for 100 years is going to get stressed out even more. There are really ghastly stories in other parts of the world where the heat has been unrelenting about, streets melting, all kinds of, it's just like the physical things that we consider civilization. They're just become very fragile, and it's going to be the kind of disasters that normally you have a disaster and you recover. That's that narrative, right? That I keep talking about. So that's like, bad thing happens. We think about it and rebuild maybe a little better, but it's going to happen too fast, too close to each other, and not be possible to rebuild. And I think it's, and it's also not going to happen everywhere all at once. Right now, the famous go over 2 degrees has been happening at the poles for years now. We have a big average that makes it look like things are better than it actually is. And the poles are about the most fragile place on the earth. That's like a place you wouldn't want it to have these kind of climate changes, to have all that energy pushed in to melt the ice, which makes this feedback loop. I know, I can get really paranoid about it. So when you talk about what keeps me up at night, that's one of the things. It's just like, I don't even know where to begin, because, the people who are very rich and think they can buy their way out of a crisis. Surprise. That's climate votes continuously. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, McLuhan said the future ain't what it used to be. So, Henry, the next question is, Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Whose?
There you go. That is a beautiful answer. Concise and articulate. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Sure. I'm sitting in the back. Do you know what a Volkswagen Beetle is constructed like if you're a kid?
Oh, yeah.
They are, there's a thing called the back seat, and then there's a thing called the way back.
Yeah.
You're actually sitting on top of the engine.
Yeah.
You're behind the back seat. So there I am in the back seat of Volkswagen Beetle. That's sort of my earliest kind of memories. And
Yeah.
feeling of that carpet, I can recall as surely as Proust's Madeleine.
Oh, nice. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, of course it's a blessing.
Yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
Well, my father was in the he was in the public relations biz, and he had his own little fun company. And the way he ran his company, it was like a little family of his own. And he was a tremendous goofball. He was very funny. And for a guy who got like a basketball scholarship to go to college and things like that, he was totally non-competitive, which is a great lesson. I mean, there's some people who are just horribly competitive, and it kind of ruins their families.
Yeah.
But we didn't have that at all growing up. I have 5 siblings, so
Wow.
I'm in a kind of a community, and we're all still alive. Despite the best efforts of various cancerous cells in our body, including my own. I had prostate cancer, but I'm totally fixed.
I hope you survive.
Is the word, but
well, the next question in Henry is same question, but outside your immediate family. Someone who had an impact on you, and what was the impact?
Well, I mean, I already mentioned Pauline Oliveros, and it's very interesting that I sort of met her late in life and knew about some of her work before I actually met her. She also lived in Kingston. You have to realize that Kingston is like a weird center of avant-garde thought and music, right?
Yeah.
So Pauline Oliveros and Marianne Amichet and Carol H. Naiman and Linda Montano, and of course dozens of people who are maybe less known but are living their lives like that.
Yeah.
So but you get a lot of her, the main thing that I get from her is like the validation that the things that I've been thinking all along are in fact something that has been successful in her life. So you just kind of need that. You need a model to prove, because you're flailing around. You have all these stories in your head. Which one is the story that's really the one that works for me, right? So I'm glad to have met her and, done work with her. And, and my ex-wife too, I get a lot from.
Beautiful. I got a specific Pauline Oliveros question when we get to music, but the next question is, did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Well, we are Christmas tree Jews. That used to be my joke about Unitarians. I'm sort of a Unitarian Universalist now.
Yeah.
But, my joke is that how do you tell the difference between a Reformed Jew and a Unitarian Universalist? The Reformed Jew is the one with a Christmas tree.
Henry, do you pray?
No.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I have to really pass on that one. But
no worries. Do evil people exist, or does the evil use people as a vehicle?
Well, there is a thing that we say. I'm a father, and when my kids were little, we had these great things to say that was like, there are no bad people, but there are bad behaviors.
Yes,
I
very
think
good.
that's where you have to go with this particular questions of good and evil.
Well, the hidden question
But there's
really,
plenty of bad behaviors going on, right? We
yeah,
see bad behaviors. They're bad behaviors,
yeah,
but they don't have. But having my consciousness, whatever that is, as if I was better than anybody else, you know, they have not seen a narrative that they can hold on to that will satisfy them, that gets rid of this bad behavior,
yeah,
basically. And a lot of that all the intergenerational trauma is exactly that. It's like,
yeah.
I see this is working. Big father, stick, carrot, whatever it may be. That's all they know. They don't. They haven't been able to find another way to live. And so, you know, you need more input, people. And if
Well,
part of your narrative is other people are not worth learning about, that's really going to shut down your possibilities.
really, really well put. And the hidden question, really, Henry, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah, well, that also goes to like George Lakoff. It's like you're using their framing.
Wow, I like that.
It's like they have given you this stuff, and you're just responding to them, you know, which reinforces what they are. So, you know, Lakoff's answer is you have to make a truth sandwich. Maybe you've heard that, which is, you know, start off with something that is actually true, then show how that other narrative is not working, and then reiterate it again, just so that they're not left with this bad narrative in their minds, because, you know, it's the last thing you think of that sort of sticks there. So that's why he talks about truth sandwiches. So you can take or leave Lakoff, but that's certainly something that's true.
No, I think Lakoff's important, and I'm glad you taught me that part of him. I use a few lines of his in a lot of my studies, and I appreciate what he's done. He's very close to McLuhan in a lot of ways. And the follow-up, well, I mean, if one of your kids came home and they were being bullied, what advice would you give them?
You know, my kids fortunately never went to school, so they never got bullied. When people say homeschoolers need socialization, what they really mean is they need to be bullied and be in cliques.
Wow.
But no, there have been situations like that, and they just, fortunately, they have such a great sense of their own selves that it's totally not a problem. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And again, what have I been saying over and over again? It's like, that's a narrative. It says, hi, I'm going to tell you that you are inferior. And there you are. And you can believe it or not. And most of the time, just not believing it works pretty well.
Yeah,
unless this is physically hurt, but you know.
This is the follow-up, Henry. Nassim Taleb said, games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Gregory Bateson says, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts. The basic question is, does punishment work?
Well, gee, am I repeating myself over and over and over again?
Hey, that's totally fine.
Yeah, it's like there's a world where punishment works because that's the narrative.
Yeah.
And And if both sides buy into it, it probably works.
Yeah.
But right now we have a criminal class that says, if I'm not caught, it's not a crime. And not only that, but I now have a Supreme Court that says, whatever I do, I can't get caught. I don't know what happened to the Monopoly board that gave everybody get out of jail free cards.
That is good. Well, this is the next follow-up question. And again, it's like a Fireside Theater, the Department of Redundancy Department, but you go wherever you want with this. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, William Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, I'm a Brechtian. If I really, I'm Unitarian, but I'm really a Brechtian.
Yeah.
As lousy as Brecht was as a human being. And there's basically the Verfremdungseffect that he talks about so much is really a thing called the mask that reveals. It's like, yes, I'm going to show you something here that you will understand is fake, but because it's working on its own rules, it will give you, again, a narrative that you can work with to find the inner truth of what's going on here. So that's really where I come from. And that means I really like that when that works really well. Yes, it's a simplification, this mask that reveals, but it also helps you concentrate. So, and that's why he would, suddenly stop the lights and put on a little music in the middle of his show. It's not so much to entertain, but as to remind you that people don't do that.
Wow. So I missed the word before effect. The Brechian, you said something effect.
Oh, in English, they call it alienation effect, or they call it, in German, they call it a Verfremdungseffekt or V-effect or V effect.
FAU, F-A-U-X, FAU, F-A-U.
No, the letter V is pronounced FAU in German.
Right. So how do you spell that? V?
It's spelled V. That's it. V.
Oh, the V effect. Okay.
The letter V is called FAU.
Now, this is a really bad one on my part. I'm not sure if it's called double bind or double blind, but my friend explains it as pay no attention that I'm lying to you. Is that similar to what you just described to me?
Huh. Well, I don't. I'm trying to figure out how both double bind or double blind could apply to any of that.
Well, one of them, my friend insists, is what is the difference between double bind and double blind?
I don't even know if there is a double bind, so you don't have to worry about it that much.
Okay, then it's double. Anyways, it's what
I used to work in a medical company that actually administered all the clinical trials, not all of them, but a huge number of them from the beginning to the end. And the double blind part of it is the person asking the question, doesn't have like the answer, and neither does the person who is being questioned. It's like,
right.
It's like the guy giving the shot doesn't know that whether that's a placebo or not. Because
placebo, that's it. It's blind. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it used to be when they were doing science before they figured this technique out, the influence, because they knew that this vaccine or whatever, was the thing they're trying to test. There was so much even innate prejudice to make that work. And you can actually see that happen in so many other processes that don't have a double blind aspect to it. So it's like, because I want this to work, it's going to work, and they will fudge it as much as possible here's my 50%. It's an astounding 50%. Yay. As opposed to, I don't like that glass half empty stuff because, but you get the idea. I mean, but if they don't know, whether what they're doing is something efficacious or not, that's what makes it more honest in the science.
Yeah. That's reminds me of Rebecca Solnit says, just because you ask me a question doesn't mean I have to answer it. I'm like, totally. All I'm doing is trying to have dialogue or have exchange ideas. So what was the tipping point?
I have a funny blog about this placebos.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you mean they can,
it was hard to write.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of a literary experiment, but the idea would be like the best placebos. And, you see all these clinical trials where the placebos do remarkably well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, first of all, I claim it's because they're taking their pill with some water, and water cures so many things.
That is a good point right there. Yeah, so, that's good. That's McLuhan's main mission was causality. It's all about causality. It's about understanding relationships, pattern recognition leads to comprehensive awareness. So, Henry, where's
swimming in it?
Right. That's exactly it. The environment. Okay. So what was the tipping point where you decided to pursue programming as a calling? So what are you studying in high school and college? I know you're a musician and you do many things, but let's stay on programming at first. What was the tipping point where you go, that's my calling. That's where I'm going to, put some energy into it?
Well, I've been programming since I was a teenager, back in the 60s. So it's really been a very, very deep part of my life. And before that, as I say, it's like doing crossword puzzles. It was very much, linked into that same kind of mindset of puzzle solving. So it's something that comes very natural to me. Now, there was a point when I was in college that said, okay, I've been programming for 10 years by the time I got to college or something like that. I said, let me go and try a few other things. And I tried a few other things. And then I went away for a year and a half and it was great. And I said, you know what? I know I can do all these other things, but I can also do programming. It's like breathing to me. There's no reason for me to do this. It's and plus I can do all the other stuff I want to do. That was one of my secrets, was that for many, many years, and I still don't really have it, didn't have a television. So people say, where do you find all your time to do this stuff?
Yeah, that was one of the smart moves in your life. No TV, man. But a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. As a programmer, we'll go into music later, but as a programmer, what role does intention play in your creative process?
Well, a program is an artistic expression, oddly enough. I like to say that I'm writing for a silicon audience. It's a kind of a tough audience sometimes. So especially when you're nowadays, in the old days, as I said, I'm a really old schooler. I was talking about this machine that we made in college. That was literally, a bunch of chips stuck together. It was not something from a kit. It was, something that we had to write our own math packages for, which I couldn't stand doing. So the problems there were like at this other level from the problems you have now, which is what stuff has someone else done that I can use?
Yeah.
So back then you couldn't find that other stuff. You sort of had to make it yourself. So there's a very creative aspect that's very satisfying, and I write programs, as I said before, because there's something I needed to do, and I see other people's tools,
Yeah.
and they're not doing it for me. So I wrote an animation program 30 years ago, which can't run too much anymore. But there are things in that program that I have not seen in animation programs since.
Wow.
You know, it's just the way that certain things are handled. And again, that was a total, you know, I think I took a little bit from someone else's package in order to do JPEG compression or something. But basically, you know, I wrote the memory routines, which people don't do. I wrote the line drawing routines. I wrote the help system, which was a whole hypertext system before there were hypertext systems. You know, I wrote all this stuff, and it fits on an 880K floppy disk with the operating system and examples and various other things. So there you go.
One of my favorite experimental filmmakers, Bruce Conner, kind of said the same thing, Henry. He says, I made these films because I didn't see anyone else making this kind of film, and I wanted to see that. So I really appreciate how you word that. But you kind of answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Marcel Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your consumer of your program when you're making your program?
No one. I'm writing it for me. It's the same thing that's what Chuck Jones said. They ask him, hey, are you making cartoons for kids or adults? He says, I'm making them for me.
Yeah.
And that's,
but that's what
I'm a tough audience in that sense. And
but
also,
that's what, yeah.
you know,
But let me interject, because that's the exact same thing Frank Zappa says. I write music for myself and not other people. I like, right. I didn't say this to him personally, but I think just consider this point. I says, Frank, you're over romanticizing the creative process because you live in a consumer society. You know, if you hit these notes and sing these lyrics, kids will buy your music. Then you go write more music, and that's all the power to you. And he's the most least sold out kind of, you know, rock star there is. But I think Chuck Jones knew that there was an audience, and he could never separate that. So how do you talk about that? I mean, I like what Chuck Jones is saying.
He's also saying it, but he also recognizes that a lot of people like the stuff that he does, and that's not much up to him. But then again, it's, you know, has to do with the concept of self and, you know, how expansive is it? You know, are we universal, you know, or your oceanic self that you supposedly gave up when you were a baby?
I love that oceanic self. I need that line. And so here's one more in this regard. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium. Knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. And maybe even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, extends consciousness. What is the computer? I imagine that's your main tool as a programmer. What does the computer extend? What humanness?
It isn't so much that it extends stuff, but it focuses stuff.
Yeah.
What it doesn't have that gives it the advantages that it comes up with.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's nothing, it's not doing something else. It's just being a computer.
Yeah. Well, and we're almost to an end on our 90 minutes. I hope we can do a part 2, because I really like to get into music, film, pixel vision, science. But I think a main theme of talking to you today, Henry, and it's really been a delight, and I learned a lot, and I'm grateful, is narrative. And I spoke with this gentleman who went to school with Bob Dylan, and then he became his road manager, and then he became religious. And he told me that he heard from a friend that narrative and storytelling are two different things, and that narrative never lies. So I'm just curious, do you find, is there a difference between storytelling and narrative, and this line, narrative doesn't lie?
What that might be trying to express is, I'm not saying that there is a monadic narrative out there that gets expressed as stories. But as you can tell, there are some things, I'm not talking, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey thing like that, but maybe I am. The same stories get re-expressed again and again in different ways from basically the same narrative. That's it's an expression. So I can't say one is better than the other. You can certainly figure it out, but underlying this stuff, discovering that there is something underlying these stories, that's where you get all platonic.
Yeah, it's interesting because underlying, it's funny you said that word, because words evoke more in their meaning, and the word lie is in the middle of belief. And so the fact that he says narrative is lying, narrative can't lie. I don't think that they're trying to insinuate that lying is bad. Marcel Proust's question, you brought up Proust recently, and Marcel Proust's question is, and I'll ask you right now, on what occasion do you lie?
Well, it's there's some occasions where it doesn't matter at all, or lying is more interesting. I have a very elaborate lie. If you go and look me up on the internet, my bio in almost every social media spot is, I was born in 1823 and lie about my age. I am also 6 microns tall and live in the eye of a needle. And that is my standard bio.
Yeah.
And the idea part of that is, I know that things are sniffing the internet to find out who I am. And that's who that's gonna be heavily reinforced. And I sort of am born in 1823 and lie about my age. My 203rd birthday was back in January on the 27th. And if you put your head into that, actually, and I do, I have a different attitude about what the 19th century is and the early 20th century than a lot of other people. Fortunately, I'm living in a part of the country where you can do that. Your part of the country was under Spanish rule at the time, but mine was Dutch and English before it was there. And we have a thing here that's a block from where I live called the Four Corners, where all 4 buildings on this corner predate the American Revolution. In fact, which I say is American. In America, that's a wow. In Europe or anywhere else, it's like, who cares?
Who cares? I love that. And the word evolution is the middle of revolution. We re-evolve. So this is, we could close off with this one, Henry. Hollis Frampton, I think he hung out in your area of the country, great experimental filmmaker, said, narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. So I added the question, can you forget to die?
Oh, that's an interesting question, isn't it? There are situations where you die in order to become reborn. You don't have to be dead to die. And there's another thing is, if you are dead, you may not be totally dead, not in the Princess Brideian sense, but in if there are people who have an idea of what your narratives were, you are sort of alive still. I can't remember the actual words for this, but there was like the last person who ever, contacted you in your life, when they're dead, that's when you're really dead. Something like that.
What's that from, Henry?
Oh, I think it was, I can't remember where it's from.
Well, if you ever
it's an African thing, it was not something from the West, clearly, but it was like It was like when the last person who remembers who you are, who you were after you died, dies. That's when you're really dead.
Yeah, when you die, that's when you're really dead. That's amazing. That's two things. Paul Krasner said, I only believe in reincarnation in one of my past lives.
Yep. That's
And then my other friend says, whatever happens, whatever you believe happens to you after you die is what happens to you after you die. So if you believe in reincarnation, then you're reincarnated. If you believe you're going to be a piece of meat in the earth, then that's what happens to you. Who knows?
Well, again, as long as there are people who are still dealing with you after you're dead,
yeah,
then you're not really dead anyway. That's your afterlife. Your afterlife is everybody else. That's what your afterlife is.
Yeah.
And so going to heaven or hell after you're dead is, oh, how are people going to think of you after you're dead?
Yeah.
Where are they going to put you? Because they're putting people in heaven and hell constantly all the time. You don't have to be in heaven or hell.
That's the setup. Perfect, Henry. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite jokes is works both ways, heaven or hell. So the guy goes to heaven and he gets to the pearly gates and he peeks in and he goes, "You've got Zoom in heaven?" And the St. Pete goes, "That's all we got." And then the guy goes to hell and the devil's standing there and he peeks in and he goes, "You've got Zoom in hell?" And the devil goes, "That's all we got." So anyways, it's really been a pleasure, Henry, and I appreciate your time and energy here. And I look forward to you being in the Pixel Fest this year. And tell you the truth, this has been amazing because not only of what you taught me and the fact that you did it all on Pixel Vision visual, unbelievable. I really want to salute you for being a Pixel Vision pioneer. I want you to meet Sam Ray Wilson, who is my co-helper on the Pixel Fest, and you two have to hook up because he's always exploring how you can take the Pixel camera a little beyond the norm, but not lose the essence of its pixelness, So
yeah, I mean, there's the camera-ness, which is full of great life by itself. And Sam, he got this 3D printed thing, which is why this is standing so well. It's finally the real Pixel Vision camera has no way to mount it.
You mean you bought one of Sam's mounts for the?
Yes. So it's mounted thanks to that. And it's been tricked out with all these goodies. Like I haven't gone, real pixely, but now I am pixely.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
This is really beautiful.
Did you do that yourself or did Patrick?
Patrick did it.
Oh, wow. How long ago?
About 3 years ago. I have to send this thing back to him because my transport is shot. Yeah. A gear fell out of it. And I said, I can probably fix this, but I'd feel better. There may be more things broken inside than I can fix. And he probably has, a couple of spare parts ones that he can use. I'll turn this back. Yeah. Isn't that great? Those are
that is great. Well, I'll be
able to do some transfers of my legacy Pixel Vision cassettes like this one. By the way, I used to have a cache of 10-minute cassettes, audio cassettes, which in Pixel Vision lasts about 90 seconds or 110 seconds. Yeah. Because it runs about 8.5 times faster than natural size. And so that would make a beautiful short form video format.
Totally. And is that high bias tape? Was it high bias tape?
It was just boring tape, but run it fast enough. And of course, you want some of those fun little artifacts.
Yeah. I love them. I love all the artifacts of the Pixel camera. So again, Thank you so much, Henry. I really appreciate this. I'm going to hit the end broadcast button now, but I hope this never ends. We can do part 2 and we keep talking forever and ever. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I can blab all day.
Hey.